Greetings, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to IKG's Wisdom Wednesday. I am your host for the evening, Sister Ajwa, and I would like to welcome everyone to our program this evening. For those who may be new to IKG, IKG is an organization founded by Anthony Browder, and our Wisdom Wednesday is a monthly lecture series held, it's a free lecture series held every third Wednesday of the month, where we bring to you speakers who present on various topics related to African history, culture, health, wellness, financial literacy, all things that apply to our lives. So we are thankful that you are able to join us this evening. Since COVID has started, we've been conducting our Wisdom Wednesdays via Zoom webinar. So because we're not able to be together in person, we like to present an opportunity for us to kind of get to know each other. So we ask that you let us know where you are checking in from. So in the chat, you can put your city, your state, and we will shout you out. Before we begin tonight's program, I would like to share with you a couple of events that IKG will be hosting. And I'm going to share the images. The resolution might not be super clear, so I will read this for everyone. There will be an ancestral remembrance gathering honoring the lives and legacies of Dr. Minoko Rashidi, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, and Dr. Patricia Newton. These gatherings will take place on Saturday, August 27th, 2022 in Washington, D.C. It will be from 1 to 4 p.m. and the location is the IKG Cultural Resource Center, 1816 12th Street Northwest. Again, that is in Washington, D.C. You can find out about this event and purchase tickets by going to Eventbrite. And in the search bar, type in IKG and the event will pop up. There will also be an ancestral remembrance gathering held in Philadelphia. This will take place on Thursday, September 1st, 2022. From 6 to 8 p.m. at the Mashudala Center, 7401 Limekiln Pike, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And on Friday, September 2nd, 2022, there will be a free Zoom fundraiser. To register for this fundraiser, we will place that in the chat for everyone. But the fundraiser, I will share that image so that you all can see. This is for Minoko Rashidi's daughter. This will be a free Zoom fundraiser featuring Paul Coates, Atlantis, and Anthony Browder, and Asada Garvey Ross. Invited special guests include LeGrand Clegg, Dr. Joyce King, Senghor Baye, James Small, and others. This is a special fundraiser for Asada Garvey Ross, the 16-year-old daughter of Minoko, and is a community effort to assist Asada as she enters her last year of high school in Paris. Your participation and financial support are greatly appreciated. Please contribute using Cash App and leave your email address so that we may acknowledge your support. So once you register, we will get that information to you in terms of how to donate. There is the Cash App QR code here if you're able to use your phone to access it. You can also register. You can also register at bit.ly/3SEEKNP. So again, we hope to see you out. And again, for the Ancestral Remembrance gatherings, those tickets are $50 and can be purchased at Eventbrite. And if you're going to the one in Washington, D.C., make sure your search city is Washington, D.C. And for Philadelphia, make sure your search city is Philadelphia. Type in IKG and you will see the link to purchase tickets. Okay. So now I want to acknowledge the people who are in the building. Let's see, we have Owings Mill, Maryland. Thank you for joining us. Portland, Oregon is in the house. Pennsylvania is in the house. If you're near Philly, hopefully you'll be able to join IKG on Thursday, September 1st. Let's see, we have Haiti, Central African, Brooklyn, DC is in the house. Fredericksburg, Virginia, Burlington, New Jersey, Fairburn, Georgia, DC in the house, Danbury, Connecticut, my home state, Chicago, Illinois, Silver Spring, New York, Virginia, Brooklyn again, Adelphi, Maryland, Atlanta, California, again, Chi-Town, Louisiana, all right, Shreveport, Louisiana, Brooklyn is in here heavy, Philly is in here, Kalamazoo, Michigan, South Jersey, Brooklyn, and I'm going to give another special shout out to Connecticut because Connecticut is representing tonight. And of course, Maryland. Thank you all again for joining us. Just a few housekeeping notes. As we're going through our program, if you have specific questions that you would like our presenter to address, please place those questions in the Q&A box. And we will ask those questions during the Q&A portion of the program. And now on to tonight's event. Tonight's program is entitled Often Unspoken Lessons of the African Revolution in Haiti with our presenter, Kwao Agyeman. He writes, typically, the Haitian Revolution, African Revolution in Haiti, is viewed from the perspective of we defeated 3 of the most powerful armies of that time period. We look at the revolution from the perspective of a defeat of Napoleon's army from the combined efforts of Nana Henry Christophe, Nana Jean Jacques Dessalines, Nana Toussaint Louverture, Nana Boukman, Nana Cecille Fatima, Nana Sanite Belair, and many others. However, we typically do not discuss the level of internal conflict among the heroes of the revolution and what occurs after the revolution. This discussion will touch on these topics and the implications of how we need to look at history to better inform our strategic present actions. And our speaker, Kwao Agyeman, is an Asurjibi Okomfo, which is of the Akan spiritual tradition. He has a degree in electrical engineering. He is a member of the Ankobia Society. He was born in Haiti and moved to the United States at the age of 6. He is a husband, father, and grandfather. He currently organizes the Ankobia Male Adolescent Rites of Passage program. Please join me, friends and family, in welcoming Okomfo Kwao Agyeman.
All right, Medasi, Asina Khan, thank you very much.
Yes.
Merci en pile in Creole.
Yes.
So I guess I'll start with introduction. I'll share my screen at the same time too. And I hope everything works as planned.
It will. And it will, and it will.
Yes, let's go. Let's see. All right. All right, so often unspoken lessons of the African Revolution in Haiti, all right? As Mama Aju said, I'm in the Okomfo, in the Khan tradition. I specifically selected the Khan tradition because of how close it was to voodoo in Haiti. And that's a different story, a longer story for a different time. All right. So topics of our discussion: introduction, how and why we study history, a quick discussion on the height of the revolution. It's not black and white. It's not easy to swallow. Civil War, after the revolution, Civil War again, La coup system, and what do we do today? All right. So this little, let me see, there we go. All right, that little arrow right there points to where I was born, and just a little bit southwest of that, right around the number 1 there, is, and between the 1 and 3 is my mother's side, and my father's side is in Okap Haitien, in this small town just a little bit north of that. So let me kind of give you a background of when my thoughts started shifting of how I need to look at Haiti. When we had the major earthquake, I think it was 2010, I forgot the day, I'm terrible with dates, right? But around 12 or 13 years ago, the major earthquake in Haiti. Our uncle was, we couldn't get hold of him. So we had to, go to Haiti and see what we could do, right? And so we collected funds from a whole bunch of community members in the DC, Maryland area, folks in New York also, and took that money and went down to Haiti. While in Haiti, my son and I and my cousin, we no electricity, no power, and nothing, right? So for us to charge our cell phones, we had to go to walk up the block, like a little hill and around here, around there. And there was this guy that had like 2 batteries, car batteries. And I'm assuming that he would charge them overnight on a generator. And then on the car batteries, he had these 2 he had these little surge protectors, surge strips attached to him. He had rigged it so he could get the power from the car batteries. And then what you would do is you would pay him the equivalent of like 30 cents US, and then you would plug your phone in and charge it for the day, because you couldn't charge at nighttime because there's no power, or even in daytime, there's no power, right, where we were staying. Then we see, as we're waiting, because we didn't want to leave our phones there, we're like, somebody's gonna take our phones. So we were just sitting there, right there, waiting for our phones to get charged. And me and my son are there waiting. And meanwhile, people come up to this guy who's monitoring, who owns the batteries, the whole system. And they're asking him, hey, can you fix my cell phone? So they take out their cell phone and say, look, can you, I can't hear out of the phone, but people can hear me. So the guy takes the phone, opens it up, takes a toothbrush and starts scrubbing a section, of the circuit board inside there, and then puts it back together, gives to the guy, said, try it now. And it works. And I was like, wait a second, what did he just do? He took a toothbrush out and he brushed a little section. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I'm looking at this because, as Mama Ajua explained is the intro, I'm an electrical engineer. But not only am I an electrical engineer, my job in the US for 11 years was literally to design cellular systems, right? To figure out where the cell towers are going to go in an area so that way people can get full coverage. So I knew exactly how the cellular systems work and everything, but I had no idea what he did to that phone. And then that's when it hit me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not coming to Haiti to help Haiti. I'm coming to Haiti for Haiti to help me. Because in the US, if your cell phone is broken, you just run to the store and get a newer model, or have them, they fix it for you, right? And so it's a level of dependency that we have on the entire system in the US. We're totally dependent on the system. And in Haiti, you have to create your own thing in Haiti, right? And that's similar in a lot of other places too, which has, not as industrialized as the United States, right? So this is one big lesson, and that started me on a different way of looking at Haiti in general. So I just want to give you that precursor. Second precursor I want to give you is that I'm not going to say some nice things about some of what happened in the Haitian Revolution, okay? Please do not feel offended, right? I'm gonna try and say in the best way for us to learn lessons from this, okay? I have no problem understanding that our esteemed elders, our esteemed ancestors are esteemed not because of only the great things they did, but also because of their flaws, right? Of the mistakes that they made. So it's a combination of both that you have to be able to look at. Why is somebody esteemed, right? Okay. All right. So, I need to see stuff from the chat at the same time. What do these images have in common? And you're like, wait a second, what does that have to do with Haiti? So put in the chat, what do these images have in common? And let's see what we get. So this is a Black Jesus, this is Black Panther, and this is Storm. Hey, somebody said Savior, anybody else? Hogan said, that's right, anybody else? All fictional, nice. Pan-African, I like that. All right, so we're gonna go with those three, and all those three actually fit, right? Shango, Batala, interesting, yes, right? Superpowers, right? The one I want to fixate on is Savior, right? Is Savior. Yes, Black pride and potential, yes. So I want to focus on Savior. And why am I going to focus on Savior? Because there is a human tendency, I'm specifically saying a human tendency, right? Not European tendency, African tendency, or anything. It's a human tendency to look for a savior, right? But it's the culture that we create as human beings, right? As Africans now, is to figure out that we know that this is a tendency, and how do we deal with that tendency? And this is really important because you can go throughout all the different proverbs and history and stories, fables, myths of different peoples around the world, and you will always have this hero type personality, right? But here in the United States, it is very strong. We're always looking for a savior. We're always looking for the Messiah, right? In every which possible way we can. I mean, think about it. Today is Marcus Garvey's birthday, and his name was Messiah, right? Right? So, and we refer to other people that are heroes in different movements as the messiahs, right? And that's a problem. And then, but now it's a problem in terms of us looking for a savior, but it's also a problem in terms of how we interpret history. All right. All right. So how do we look at history? The hero complex. Okay. How do we combat the hero complex traditionally? Right. Now, some of it was just natural because we just understood how we should interact with nature, right? By having a multiplicity in terms of what, and I hate to say this word, but in terms of deities, I'm putting in quote unquote deities, right? We didn't have this monotheistic type systems, right? And because if you look at the world and the universe, is made up of a multiple uncountable things that create what we are. So of course there has to be uncountable things that represent, right, all these different aspects of the universe, of spirituality and so forth, right? If that's the case, then we're not going to be looking to one person as a leader. That's important. So us having this multiplicity of deities, Loa, Abosun, right, Orisha and so forth, right, or Neteru, or a specific way for us to say, no, there's not just one central leader somewhere. And you'll see a lot of our systems are organized this way, right? It's a decentralized systems. All right. we would have council of elders, right? And at some special times we might have to select a particular leader to lead in a particular way, right? And then we would have interconnected family-based leadership, right? So we would have a group of families, and certain elders in those families would come together to lead that community, right? But these are all the ways that we traditionally combated the hero complex, because we knew, right? We understood inherently, implicitly, right? Or just by us being in unison with the universe, right? With the Mother Earth, we understood, right? That this was the way to go, and this hero thing is just a tiny small piece of the pie. I hope that makes sense, okay? Oh, somebody said fractal systems. Somebody's a mathematician. All right. Okay. Oh, okay. I want to ask you guys a question. Why do we look at history? Put on the chat. Why should we look at history? Am I saying it correctly? 1 second. I'm gonna flash back to my question again, real quick. I'm gonna flash back. Yeah. Why should we look at our story? Put it in the chat. Sankofa. You have to explain Sankofa more clearly. Thank you, Deborah. Oh, okay. To learn from the past. Awesome. Awesome. Oh, that's Mama Eshe. I'm sorry, Mama Eshe. How you doing? All right, Sankofa, correct. Anybody else? History versus our story. Awesome. Anybody else want to add on? Great. Anybody else? To prevent repeating errors. Awesome. All right, so everybody said some good stuff there, but there's a slight problem. So everybody got it. So the green is what I want you all to say. You got it correct. Okay. All right, and so I'm going to say to determine correct strategic decisions that need to be made in our best interest now and the near future. That should be the top reason why we should be looking at our history, to determine correct and strategic decisions that need to be made in our best interest now and the near future. Oh, but however, often we look at our history for pride. We were great. We were smart. We taught the enemy, we taught the Europeans how to be whoever they are, how genius we were, right? Then we also look at our history in terms of blame. Look what they did to us, right? So and all this applies to the Haitian Revolution, right? Sometimes we talk about Haitian Revolution, right? All you can hear is what they did to us, and that's it. But if you play a game and you lose, and all you can focus on is what they did to you, and in the loss, you're not going to win the next game. If you focus on the external, you're not going to win the next game. You got to see what did you miss, right? In order to become better, right? So a lot of times we focus on blame, and then the blame is directly connected to the pride, right? And then we do some understanding of why we are today, to say, oh, we have to know who we are today, we have to understand our past, right? But understanding why we are today must come with correct and strategic decisions that will determine what we do today, okay? It must come with that. All right, to take back what was lost and stolen from us. Yeah, Bedasi. All right, so let's continue. All right, complexities of how we see the African Revolution in Haiti. So I hope you guys can see this picture, squint your eyes a little bit. What do you see in these two pictures, and what is it that you don't see in these two pictures? So I think this is a webinar format, so I'm not sure if you can speak. So I think you have to put everything on the chat. I see 2 people raise their hands.
Yes, everything must go in the chat.
All right. Oh, Cecille Salam said internal conflict is not shown. Oh, somebody said the women. Awesome. Black people are not the underdog. Yes. revolting, yes, because that's what's shown, awesome. And Black people, not the underdog, yes. So in these two pictures, you're seeing how we look at history, right? It's going to be all of us taking out the man, right? And this looks good too, right? Because they did some crazy stuff to us, right? Right? In Haiti, they would do stuff where they would tie our hand, one hand out this way, another hand, like I say, like quartered, right? All hands drawn and the feet tied to, each foot tied to a horse, each arm tied to a horse, and they would have the horses gallop, pulling our limbs apart. They would take gunpowder, right? Put it up, the anus, and then they would light it. They would do all kinds of crazy things to us, right? So us responding like this was absolutely appropriate, right? However, the picture is missing too much. It is missing too much, okay? Yes, drawn and quartered, yes, right? Buck breaking lynchings, yes, all kinds of atrocities. However, this picture on the right and the left, it makes us feel good because it shows revenge. It shows vengeance. It shows us taking back what is supposed to be ours, right? Our dignity, our strength. So it shows that, which is appropriate. But if we're trying to figure out how to make correct decisions, this is not enough. So if we're trying to figure out how to move in our best interests, those two images are not enough to make us really understand what happened in the African Revolution in Haiti. Because these two pictures connect us more to pride, blame, and understanding why we are today. It doesn't give us anything about how do we determine correct strategic decisions that need to be made in our best interest now and in the near future. All right, thank you. Does not show the aftermath. Man, we got some people on the board here. Doesn't show what they did to us. Awesome. All right, let's continue. All right, so let's go over a brief timeline of the Haitian Revolution. I'm going to try my best. This is long. If you try to look up online, like a timeline, it's pages and pages, right? To really get a good timeline. But I'm trying to give you the gist here, okay? All right, we have the invasion of Columbus, right? 1492, whatever, right? And since the invasion of Columbus, it's rebellions, right? The indigenous folks of the island, right? Which later they call Hispaniola, they call Saint Domingue, then becomes Haiti and Dominican Republic on one side, right? There's rebellion and revolt from day one, okay? And when they bring us, right? When they enslave us and bring us to the island, we're rebelling right away. We're rebelling from the continent, we're rebelling on the ship, we're rebelling on the island. Constant rebellions. So the African Revolution in Haiti begins before 1750, right? There is no clear date of when it begins, but people tend to look at 1791 and August 14th, which was a couple days ago, right? Where Boukman, right, who was a Hugan, which is like a voodoo priest, right? Cecille Fatima, right, and a few others got together, plus about 100, right, folks from different plantations in the north. And they got together and they said, and they planned out what, how they're going to burn down the plantations in a particular order, in a particular way, at a particular time, right? They strategized this, right? And some of us were like, oh, maybe, thank you, Duty Boukman, yes. So some of us are like, oh, you know what? The reason why some of our planned revolts in the US or other places didn't work out is because they were informants, right? But there was informants here too. So there are some people in the group who informed the slave masters, right, that there's going to be a revolt happening. And one of the things they did was they tortured some of us to speak, right? Then when they heard the plan, they were like, man, get the hell out of here. These guys don't have it within them to burn down all these plantations, right? That's what was there. That's what they thought was. And of course, right, on the next couple of days, burned down the plantations. They up in the north, a whole bunch of them was set on fire. The French, responded with murdering a whole bunch of us in different plantations. Then all hell breaks loose. Boukman is killed within a few months of the revolution. Cecille Fatima lives on. They say she's like 112 years old. That's part of the story with how long she lives, right? So she goes on way past the revolution, right? So anyway, so from 1791 to 1796 is warring back and forth. Toussaint Louverture, it takes leadership, right? He is negotiating with the British, playing the British against the French, playing against the Spanish, and he's playing the US, and he's doing all this stuff simultaneously, right? To figure out how to get control of the island. And so in 1796, he gets control of the island, right? At that time, it's not called Haiti yet, right? Or IET, it's not called that yet, right? So he takes control and he runs the island as the governor of France, a governor for France. So he's running the island as if Haiti or Saint-Domingue is a province, a colony of France. And he does this for several years. And to a point where the folks under his rule are complaining, saying like, this is as bad as slavery, right? Because the only thing they really know at that time is the plantation economy in terms of the leadership. The leadership is trying to make sure there's still trade going on between, Saint-Domingue and France, Saint-Domingue and the rest of the other occupied territories in the Caribbean with the United States. So Toussaint and his generals are still trying to make sure this happens. And his generals include Dessalines, Henry Christophe, right? So and then Moïse, right? It includes all of these major people, right? And then so sometimes people try to say that Dessalines is like Malcolm X and Toussaint is like Martin Luther King, because people will say like, look, Toussaint loved the French, and he did, right? But I'm gonna tell you one thing, Martin Luther King didn't take out 3 major empires, right? And second, Malcolm X never worked under MLK, right? Dessalines specifically was underneath the tutelage of, and one of the main generals, the key generals underneath Toussaint Louverture, right? So this is too easy of a comparison to say, oh, this is Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King was about integration and Malcolm X was about separation, right? That's too easy out, right? It's more complicated than that. All right. So while Toussaint's running the island, and he's negotiating with the French, and he's trying to maintain the same plantation system. Again, his main generals are doing the same thing. Dessalines has one section of Haiti. You have Moïse has another section. Again, these are different generals, and then I think you have like 6 or 7 key generals who had different sections of the island that were making sure that the plantation economy was running properly. Okay, one of these generals, which was Moïse, who was actually, his name was Moïse Louverture, who was actually Toussaint's nephew. And so he would treat, so Toussaint, Toussaint brought back, while he was running the island, he brought back some of the French planters, right? Some of the ex-slave masters, right? And brought them back to run their plantations. In some areas, we were not having it. And so Moïse was like, he didn't like that. And so if any infraction the French ex-masters would do, right, wrong, anything wrong, he would hang him or shoot him and stuff like that, right? Or he would let whoever that was done wrong to, he would let them have their revenge, right? And Toussaint didn't like this. And so Toussaint called his nephew back to the capital or Cap and had him assassinated, okay? So this is beginning of part of the intrigue of the Haitian Revolution, all right? So Moïse is looked at as a hero of the Haitian Revolution. So is Toussaint, but Toussaint has Moïse assassinated. Okay. All right. So now this is where it gets really funky. 1802 to 1803, the French returned under Leclerc and Rochambeau. And so Leclerc is Napoleon's brother-in-law, I think. Rochambeau is a general also. And they come from France with about 15,000, I think at least 15,000 troops, and war breaks out. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide and discuss this some more. All right, so here I have a whole bunch of people here that represent one direction. Okay, and I'm going to go through them, right? Okay, so we already have Macandal on this. Let me see if my mouse is working. Can you see my mouse right here? I guess nobody can say yes. But down here, my mouse is moving around. That's Macandal. I mentioned it before, right? He in the 1750s, he predates the Haitian Revolution. In the 1750s, he's responsible for major outbreak of poisonings, rebellion in Haiti. He's caught, according to some people, that he was caught 3 times, attempted to be killed 3 times, and he survived 3 times, right? And some people say that he was actually killed 3 times and he came back 3 times, okay? So there's a lot of history with Macandal. An interesting thing is that in the height of Macandal's rebellion, Toussaint Louverture is a teenager. He's around 13, 14 years old. So he's aware of what's happening, directly aware of what's happening with Macandal at that time. All right. So Sans Souci, right here, I couldn't find a picture of Sans Souci. All right. So Sans Souci represents, he was directly brought in from the Congo, right? Directly enslaved from the Congo. And the Congo was going through civil war at the time. And so they had a whole bunch of guerrilla fighters knowing how to fight, right? Through in mountains, in forests and so forth, right? Through water, all kinds of stuff, right? Using their spiritual powers, everything. That's Sans Souci. Now, Sans Souci was what they call a nègre bossal, okay? And a nègre bossal is what they called an African that they brought, that they enslaved, but was not enculturated yet to the slave system, right? So they would call him a nègre bossal, like he's a wild African, right? He hadn't learned how to properly behave in a plantation system. So that's Sans Souci. But I specifically show you Sans Souci as a collection of people, right? Fighting, getting ready for battle, right? Because Sans Souci, so Sans Souci ends up fighting against Henry Christophe over here on the left. He fights against Jean Jacques Dessalines. He fights against Alexander Pétion, right? So if I go back to here, give me 1 second. If I go back here, in 1802, when the French come back, right? And they try to reinstate French law, clearly French law, remove any Black presence governing the island, right? Even though Toussaint was governing the island pretty well, in their system, right? They want control back. Napoleon is like, no, we need to control this island back, right? And so they come down with 15,000 troops. They threaten, they come there with Toussaint's 2 children, because his children were in France, right? 2 of his children. And there's like a threat of holding children hostage, right? And they go to war, right? Toussaint sends a message to Dessalines and says, burn down Au Cap, burn it down now, right? It could have been Dessalines or it could have been Henry Christophe, but he sends a message to one of the generals and says, burn down Au Cap, right? Which is where my family's from. Burn it down because they're coming. We don't want to let them have access to anything, right? So they start burning and burning different areas so that way when the French come there, they don't have access to food, water, and so forth, right? However, the French is able to have a temporary defeat of Toussaint and Dessalines and Henri Christophe. In that temporary defeat, Dessalines, right, and here is Dessalines right here. So Toussaint, in that temporary defeat, agrees to retire to a plantation, right? So he agrees to retire a plantation. That's part of the treaty, right? Jean Jacques Dessalines joins the French army, and his army joins the French army. Alexandre Pétion, his army joins the French army. Henri Christophe, down here, his army joins the French army. Sans Souci, his army joins the French army, right? Sanite Belair, right? This is a little bit confusing here with Sanite Belair. I'm not sure if she actually joined or not, but her and her husband were loyal to Toussaint. And so after 1 month where Toussaint is retired on the plantation, the French are still not happy with that. And that's when they trick him to go to France and invest him, and he dies in a French dungeon, right? So when Toussaint is arrested and sent to France, Sanite Belair and Charles Belair, they take their faction and they start fighting the French. But while they're fighting the French, they're fighting the French and they're fighting Dessalines. They're also fighting Pétion. So Sanite Belair and Charles Belair are fighting Jean Jacques Dessalines, Alexandre Pétion, Henri Christophe in a full-out fight. They're also Sans Souci, the person from the Congo. He also breaks loose and says he's not fighting with the French anymore, and he leaves the French after about a month, right? He leaves the French, and he's also fighting against the French. And so he's also fighting, so Sans Souci is fighting against Henri Christophe, against Pétion, and against Dessalines. It's all out fight. Toussaint's out of the picture at this point, right? He is in France in a dungeon, and he dies there, okay? So you have, within the revolution, right, you have a war between Africans, right? And there's some big lessons here for us to learn. All right, so now, some people say that Dessalines was playing the French and biding his time, waiting for the rainy season while he joined the French. And that's plausible, right? While he was waiting for the rainy season so that way the mosquitoes will come and kill the French off, right? Or at least decimate a majority of their troops. That's possible. But even with that play, even with that that ruse that people say that he did, a lot of Africans died under when he was fighting other Africans that were fighting against the French, right? So if you give him the benefit of the doubt, you will say that Dessalines was doing a ruse, but that was a very dangerous ruse, right? And I don't know what Christophe was doing. I don't know what Pétion was doing. I don't know what Kwao Agyeman was doing. These other generals, I'm not sure what they were doing at that time, okay? So basically what happens is that you have several groups, several independent groups. Sans Souci represents one of them. Sanite Belair and her husband, Charles Belair, represent another group, right? And there's like several groups fighting against the French and fighting against Dessalines, Pétion, and Christophe, and other generals that have sided with the French. As stuff is happening, the French are like going to different towns and ordering the black generals, Dessalines and so forth, to disarm this town. So this is where the ruse comes in, right? In their writings, they're like, we don't believe Dessalines is actually disarming the town, because in the daytime, they are collecting the weapons, and at nighttime, we think he's giving it back to them, right? So that's where that ruse stuff the ruse comes in, right? So yes, right? But at the same time, Africans are dying. This is very, very, very dangerous way to do a revolution, right? Because it may not have happened. We assume that the revolution was successful because it was blacks against whites. We assume that the revolution was successful because it was Africans versus Europeans, Africans versus the British, Africans versus the Spanish, Africans versus the French, and we defeated all three. That's how that's not good enough for us to really understand what happened, right? In the midst, it does happen at the end, right? But before that, there's significant infighting, okay? And this has a lot of implications to today, all right? So Sans Souci, so what happens is that Sans Souci, so Jean Jacques Dessalines, Pétion, and Christophe, and all the other major generals decide to, you know what, we're going to leave the French after a few months of the infighting, and they leave the French and they talk to, before they leave the French, Sanite Belair and Charles Belair are captured. It's unclear if they're captured by French troops or if they're captured by the African troops fighting under the French, okay? Some places say that they're captured by the African troops fighting under the French. Some places say the French captured them, right? So, some books will say that they were assassinated, they were killed at the firing line by all colored troops, right? All black troops are the ones who actually pulled the trigger, right? And, you know, we got to have I got to tell you some prideful stuff, even though, right, we got to want to give the story of like this infighting. So I'm going to give some prideful stuff, right? So Sanite Belair is known that when her and her husband, she was a general in the army, right? And when she's captured, her husband, the honorable, quote unquote, honorable way to die is to put you in the front of the firing line and the muskets, and they shoot, right? And they put, right? And so that's an honorable death of a general. A dishonorable death is if they behead you, right? And so they took Sanite Belair and they were about to behead her, and she said, "Do not behead me. I am a general in the army, and in order for you to kill me, you must do it in an honorable way. And you take, I don't want any blindfold. I want to be put on the firing line, and I want you guys to shoot me as you did my husband," right? That was significant for her. That's her bravery, not afraid to die. And then Marie-Jeanne Lamartinière, right? She fought and survived past the revolution. She's known to have, like, if guns would fall, she grabbed the gun and she's in the front line shooting, right? And then when that was not happening, she's nursing wounded soldiers, right? So I just want to make sure I'm adding in some pride in what we did. Okay, I don't just go with all the infighting. All right. So Cecille Fatima, we already mentioned her. This is that picture right here of her at the Kwao Agyeman voodoo ceremony, right? Is a picture of her sacrificing this black pig, right? And the black pig is significant in Haiti, right? There's a whole different story about that, about the undermining of the Haitian economy in the 1980s under the Clintons by trying to poison the black pigs. That's a different story, right? But this is a major event, the Kwao Agyeman. This is in 1791. This is led by Cecille Fatima and Boukman, And this, you'll see today, like on August 14th past, there's different places reenacted this. They actually offered the black pig, they offered it, right? And call on the shrines, the Bosum, the Loa, to come down and give us some strength, right? I personally was, and my family was at an event where we saw this also, right? We actually went to there's a cave in the northern part of Haiti, right, where my mother's family's from, and that cave is supposed to be where they met to plot for the revolution, right? And so we went to that cave years ago. At least 3 or 4 times we've been there, and we pour libation there, for us to have some strength, knowing that this is part of where they plan and strategically plan to take over and take vengeance for what happened to us. All right, so let me see, where are we right now? Okay, so now Dessalines, Pétion, and Christophe, they defect from the French army, right? And this, the army that was fighting against them, the black folks, it was called the indigenous army. In Creole, it's a different name, but in English, indigenous army. And they joined the indigenous army, but people did not trust them, right? They didn't trust them at first because they're like, hey, you were just fighting with the French. Now you want to come with us and fight with us? We're like, I don't know. So in some places, they actually have to force people to say they are becoming the new leadership of the indigenous army, right? And specifically with Sans Souci, he refused until Dessalines and Sans Souci and Christophe came to a meeting and came to a truce. And so Sans Souci agreed to follow Dessalines as a leader and to as a coalition force to move us further towards our victory. So he agreed to that, right? But within a couple of days, only Christophe sets up a private meeting with Sans Souci. And that private meeting is an ambush. And that ambush, Henri Christophe assassinates Sans Souci. So again, more infighting, right? Internal weakness, right? However, there is one focus, right? Which is at least the saving grace, why we win. The focus is we have to get rid of the French. That was the focus. While we were doing all of this infighting, we have to get rid of the French. That's the goal. That's the goal, get rid of the French. As soon as everybody realized this on the island, right? As soon as all the Africans realized this on the island, then we moved in the right direction, okay? Ergo this little arrow going that way, right? So let me mention another sister right here, another elder, Gantoya. She is the one that is supposed to have raised and trained Jean Jacques Dessalines, right? So she raised him, showed him the art of war. She's supposed to be from Dahomey. And so she trained Jean Jacques Dessalines, okay? Capois Lamour, right? Captain of Death. He is famous for the very last battle. It's called the Battle of Vertières, right? In the Battle of Vertières, he sends the troops marching up this fort to take out the French, and they shoot at him, hits his horse dies, he gets up, continues marching on, and he's telling forward, 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 right? The French actually stopped fighting for a brief second, and they applaud him because they're like, they've never seen somebody so brave in their life, and they applaud him. The French soldiers stopped, they applaud him for his bravery, and then the fighting continues, right? I'm not making this stuff up, okay? This is stuff that's written, and this is the archives of Haitian history in terms of letters that's written about the fight at that time and so forth, okay? All right. Okay, am I missing anything? It's a lot of stuff. I'm saying, am I missing anything here? Okay. We're gonna have a question and answer. So if there's anything I'm going too fast on, we'll discuss that. We're coming to an end. All right. Haiti after the incomplete revolution. Why do I call it the incomplete revolution? It's like, no, come on, Kwao, don't call this the incomplete revolution. This is the baddest thing that's happened for African people, right? But it's incomplete. There's a reason why it's incomplete, okay? But not because of the Civil War. I'm just telling you what happened afterwards, right? Civil War afterwards. Haiti is broken up into 4 parts, right? Not including the east side, Dominican Republic. I'm talking about the west side is broken up into 4 parts, right? But then those 4 parts become 2 parts. The north is the Kingdom of Haiti and ruled by Henry Christophe, and he builds a palace, right? One of the things that he does is builds a palace and he builds a citadel, right? The citadel, you know, one of the wonders is built on top of this mountain. You have to go up about 2-3 miles to get to that mountain. As you're walking up that mountain, you're passing through clouds and you get up to the citadel, this gigantic fort that was built, blood, sweat, and tears, right? Literally, right? And under the behest of Henri Christophe, right? Because he wanted to make sure that this fort can overlook, have all these vantage points in case the French came back. This is where they would defend, right? So this is one of the legacies of Henri Christophe. While at the same time, Henri Christophe had an Italian wife. And some of us sometimes wonder, why is there spaghetti in Haiti? Like, where did spaghetti come from? Henri Christophe had an Italian wife and he loved Italian goods. He loved Italian stuff, right? A lot of people come to Haiti, you're like, where's spaghetti? Where's that coming from? But I think it came from Henri Christophe, right? Because of his love of Italian stuff. He built a palace at the base of that mountain. That palace, guess the name of the palace? Sans Souci, right? So some people theorize, is it named Sans Souci because he assassinated Sans Souci? And he was like, he wanted to be like, yeah, that's right. I'm calling it Sans Souci after I killed you, right? Or Sans Souci also means somebody who's carefree. I don't really care, right? Then also there's a Sans Souci in Europe, a big palace called Sans Souci in Europe. Was he trying to model that, right? Right. So anyway, in the south is Pétion, right? Alexander Pétion. He controls the south. There's literally a section called Pétionville, right? Where a lot more of the rich folks till today, right? And Pétion is mulatto, right? And so he controls the south. After about 20 years of this separation, the island is unified again. Okay. All right. Okay. So Dessalines is assassinated within 2 years of taking power. So Dessalines had a vision for Haiti, right? And one of the things that he had was like every family must be independent. That was one of the visions he had for Haiti. So he was like, everybody must have land and every family must have access to water. So in the northern part of Haiti, you'll see a lot of houses have a well. And that's because he mandated that you must have a well, right? In order for you to have access to water if you're in the city, if you're in Okap. So that was a big thing, right? Dessalines is assassinated within 2 years. Part of the reason why some people say is because of the land reform that he was trying to do, right? But guess who was implicated in the assassination of Dessalines? By the way, there's 1,000 theories about how Dessalines was assassinated, but all of them include some version of Christophe and Pétion. So all of the assassination theories, there's some version where Christophe is involved, there's some version where Pétion is involved, there's some versions where both Christophe and Pétion are involved. And this is oral history, right? When I go to Haiti, I'm always asking people questions. What do you think happened here? What do you think happened? What do you think happened? And I'm getting all this information. So a lot of oral history in terms of what happened with the assassination of Dessalines, okay? Part of the reason why I say complete, because power is still in the hands of a few, okay? The power is still in the hands of a few, okay? But at the same time, power is locally distributed. And this is what is key for one of the things for us to learn from today, is the power is locally distributed. How is power in the hands of a few, and how is power locally distributed? And this is key, right? So So let's look at the economy post the revolution. So the leadership attempts to reinstate the plantation economy, right? Because they had reinstated the plantation economy after they beat the French the first time, right? And then Toussaint controls the island for like 4 or 5 years. So while Toussaint's controlling the island, they brought back the plantation economy. And folks were upset, right? The masses of people were upset about this. They tried to bring it back again after the revolution, right? And it fails because people are like running away. No, we're not doing this. They're going to the hills. No, right? We're not doing this. And what they create is something called the Lakou system. Lakou literally means, quote unquote, backyard, right? Like a backyard. But the Lakou system actually represents a system of interrelated family groups, right? Sometimes it's one major family and a couple other families. Sometimes it's one major families and extensions of those families, okay? And it's the basis of the economic development of Haiti after the revolution. It's not the plantation economy. So characteristics of the Lakou system. It's multi-generational. Children are raised by parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts and uncles, right? Katha Wakatha means that's et cetera, right? So that's KWK, that means et cetera. All right, so this is important. This is really important. In our current, this is a big lesson for us here. In our current family systems, you can barely say that children are raised by parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts and uncles, because everybody's separated. Everybody has their own home. Everybody has their own apartment, right? So that's a problem, right? But this is a big lesson for us to learn, right? That in order for, we talk about nation building, we got to talk about this Lakou system. We talk about the Haitian Revolution so much. There's all these books written on the Haitian Revolution. There's barely books written. I don't even know there's one book written on the Lakou system, at least in English. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure in Creole there's probably a book or two, or French, right? But in English, is books after book about the Haitian Revolution, nothing about the Lakou system, right? And when I'm not talking about like a chapter in a book. I'm talking about a book dedicated to Lakou system. It's very hard to find, okay? So, but this is, I think, is one of the most important things about Haiti. I think this rivals the revolution, but it's not sexy, right? It doesn't have, if you talk about the Lakou system, you're not seeing this picture. If you talk about the Lakou system, you're seeing family, right? That's what you're seeing. You're seeing community, but you're not seeing this. This is exciting, right? This gets your blood up. This gets you angry, upset, ready to fight. Gets you your ire. Gets you your blood up. The Lakou system does not, but it should. This should be sexier than the Haitian Revolution, if not as sexy. All right. The Lakous were self-governing. Traditional education occurred within the Lakou. And this is important. When I say traditional education, I don't mean the European education, because a lot of times we talk about we need a better education system in Haiti. But that education system people are talking about is a European education system. It's basically an education system to teach you how to pillage the earth, right? We don't need that. So the Lakou system taught, in the Lakou, you're taught about the herbs. You're taught about the social structure, right? You're taught about hunting, right? You're taught about the cycles in nature. All of this is in the Lakou system, right? It's a barter system. They're not trading money, right? People are getting together to build somebody's house. People are getting together to plant, to harvest, right? And at the same time, too, they are also planting to sell to the main city for export outside the country. So the Lakou system also creates a lot of the export economy also simultaneously. Voodoo serves as a base of morality and maintenance of social order in the Lakou, combined with the elders, right? So voodoo is a sense of morality, all right? Now I'm talking about the early, after the revolution, the first 40, 50 years, right? This is important because the first 40 or 50 years, Catholicism is not strong in Haiti because there's an embargo that the US puts on Haiti. Nobody wants to trade, right? Same thing as that's happening today with Cuba, right? So Haiti is able to trade with some countries that are not honoring the US embargo, right? So anyway, let's continue. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. All right, each Lakou has a specific way to work with their loi. And I put here badly translated as deities, right? So lois are not deities because deities is a Western understanding, like, okay, like Thor, right, is a deity, right? You know, whatever you call these, well, I don't know, these gods that these guys have, right? I don't know the names of them, right? Except for Thor, because I watched some Marvel movies, right? You have Thor, right? So, but that's their deities. For us, it's not deity. The loi is not a deity. Loi is an aspect, a spiritual aspect of the universe, a spiritual aspect of nature that you can communicate with. This is different than a deity because a loi, being a spiritual aspect of nature, a spiritual aspect of the universe, gives you a different thing in your mind in terms of how you relate to that thing, right? So each loi, each Lakou has a different way to integrate these lois. So some of the big lois are Ogun, right? Which is in Nigeria, it's Ogun. In Benin, it's Ogun. In Haiti, it's Ogu, right? It's the same. In Ghana, it's Adadi Kofi, right? However, even though they each do it differently, there's still unison. There's still unity in terms of how, in general, Ezidanto is going to behave the same way in all the Lakus, right? In general, Ogu, the different variations of Ogu, there's a whole bunch of different Ogus. There's a whole bunch of different Ezulis also. There's Ezidanto, Ezuli Rouge, Ezuli Bayan, Grand Ezuli, and so forth. There's a whole bunch of different Ezulis, but they behave generally the same, but at the same time, they're different in each Lakou. And this is important because this is what I mentioned before. How did we combat this hero complex, right? We had this multiplicity of lois, right? So a decentralized system. So the Lakou system is decentralized, right? So this is key. It being decentralized means you can't find the head of this thing, right? But at the same time, it's unified, right? When we always think of, we have to find one leader and unify around that one leader and so forth, right? So part of the lessons that we have to learn is the Lakou system and how we can implement something similar in wherever we find ourselves. All right, almost down to the end before we get to question and answer. All right, lessons for us. State level leadership without direct accountability from the people cannot be trusted. State level leadership without direct accountability from the people cannot be trusted. Meaning that if there's some leadership that's at the state level, if you cannot, the people cannot walk into that office and remove, literally walk in. I don't mean like vote. I mean literally walk in, slap them upside their head and say, what the hell are you doing? If that cannot happen, don't trust that leader. Do not trust that leader. And this is crucial because on the continent, right, a lot of our leadership made the deals with Europeans to sell other folks into slavery of our own, right? Our own folks to slavery. So I don't care where you are. If you're on the continent, right? You're in Haiti. If you can like go to that leadership and be like, what the hell are you doing? If you're not able to do that, right? Slap them upside the head, then don't trust them. That means you got to create something on your own. How do we make the best decisions today, right? Often we're looking at the African Revolution in Haiti, again, as a sense of pride, but we're not looking at what should we be doing now. And again, the Lakou system informs us of what we should be doing now. In order for us to move towards sovereignty, we must create semi-sovereign local groups, right? In order for us to move towards sovereignty, we must create semi-sovereign local groups wherever we are. Doesn't matter if you're in the United States, doesn't matter if you're in the Caribbean, doesn't matter if you're in Ghana, you have to create this, right? And these local groups should be based on family relationships and interconnectedness between the families. And then you create an order for those families. And then you create the law for those families. What goes down, what doesn't go down. We don't have to call the police. If we have a family group and that family group determines what is law and what is not, I mean, what is right, what is wrong, and you do wrong, that family group dictates what happens. You don't have to call the police. You don't have to call the state. You don't have to call child welfare, right? That's the kind of thing that we have to build, that we have to create. Seek to go beyond the pride of our history. So whenever you're reading about, doesn't matter what you're reading about, if you're reading about the Maroons in Jamaica, go beyond the pride that we had Maroons. Try to understand what happened with the Maroons. Try to the best possible way, and what are the lessons you're going to learn from that, right? Because there's a lot of infighting with the Maroons also, right? This infighting that we do, I was just talking to one of my mentors earlier, getting ready for this talk, and he's like, yeah, we do. This infighting that we do goes on and on and on and on to today, right? Never stops. And we never talk about it, but we always looking at all of our quote unquote heroes, and we don't want to talk about the contradictions in their movement, right? Learn conflict resolution, lessons for us today, learn conflict resolution skills and build conflict resolution structures that supersedes one individual's character, one individual character. This is really important, right? I hope it's not typo here, but you get the gist, right? Learn conflict resolution skills, right? Between you and your wife, husband, children, how to resolve conflict. And then also in your organizations, build a conflict resolution structure that supersedes one's individual character, right? I don't care if the person's character is good or bad, but whatever structure that you build must supersede that. That's a lesson from the Haitian Revolution. All right, resources. Haiti, the Breach Citadel by Patrick Bellegarde-Smith. Really good book. He talks about the Haitian Revolution is not complete yet, right? The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James, that's the, whatever, I forgot how you say it, but that's the quintessential work, right? He lays out a lot of this stuff that I put down in terms of Dessalines versus Sanite Belair and stuff. He lays it out in that book, right? But everybody who reads C.L.R. James' book doesn't talk about that, right? But it's there. It's the last, go to the last 75 pages, you'll find it. When they talk about the last part of the revolution, it's in there. The Adventures of the New World by Laurent Dubois. Okay, that's a good book. Also, Silencing Our Past by Michel Wolfe-Thoreau. This is really good. This book is really good because not only does it talk about the Haitian Revolution, but it also talks about how we look at history, how we analyze history. This is an awesome book. This is really, really good book, Silencing Our Past. If you're going to read any other historical book, read that book first, right? Silencing Our Past. If you're going to read any book on history, before you do your next book on history, before you read Silencing Our Past first. All right, lectures by Baina Bello. Many of them are on YouTube. Baina Bello is a living scholar, right? You can go on her stuff on YouTube, and she has awesome lectures on Dessalines and the Haitian Revolution, voodoo, and so forth for that. Baina Bello on YouTube. Also, on Instagram, I forgot her bio, just look up her name on Instagram, but you'll see that she just had a live lecture a couple of days ago with Dr. Smalls on there. Okay. The Making of Haiti, the Saint-Domingue Revolution from Below by Carolyn E. Fick, also a very good book also. And this book focuses on looking at Haiti from the people as opposed to the leadership. It's looking at Haiti and how the people forced the leadership to act and to change sides. It was the people who forced them. All right. All right. Our mandate from this is the last slide. Our mandate from the African Revolution in Haiti. Haiti is the way we in Haiti say it, right? So we say Haiti, right? So Coupe-tête Boulekai. That's a statement that says Coupe-tête means cut heads. Boulekai means burn houses. And a lot of times people interpret this as cut the head of the enemy, burn their houses. But there's a different interpretation that some Haitians have, right? Some Haitians have this interpretation that during the Revolutionary War, some generals told other generals to let go, specifically Christophe. They told him, let go of your Italian holdings. So burn your Italian holdings, burn all the stuff you have in your house, burn that stuff. Cut your European head and get in your African mind, right? So that's our mandate from the African Revolution in Haiti. Coupe-tête Boulekai, cut your European head and burn your European thoughts, burn your European stuff that you hold on to. It's a difficult mandate, right? I have to do it myself, right? But it's tough, it's not easy, right? But at least think of it constantly, okay? Build local, semi-independent, spiritual, strategical, family-centered collectives, okay? So build local, semi-independent, spiritual, strategical, family-centered collectives. That's long. But I was trying to figure out a way to add a whole bunch of stuff in there, right? Besides just family-centered collectives. All right. Each generation must expand on the previous generation's work and resources, right? That did not happen in Haiti. Each generation must expand on the previous generation's work and resources. So when I say work and resources, if I know people aren't gonna like this, if your family had 5 acres, if your parents had 5 acres, you need to get 10 acres. You got to expand. You got to expand the family collective. If your family are Khan priest, you got to deepen the Khan knowledge. If your family are like, Yoruba priest, you got to go further with the Yoruba knowledge. And then your children got to go further than that, and so forth and so forth. This is a mandate. You must expand on the previous generation's work and resources. That's what I take from the African Revolution in Haiti. Thank you very much. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Okomfo Kwao. Audience, you all were working tonight. he had everybody working tonight, putting everything in the chat and getting us really to think about this important topic and really engaging us in tonight's presentation. Thank you so much. The chat saying, Asante Sana, excellent presentation. Modupe Baba, excellent talk, brilliant. Thank you all. Continue to share that feedback in the chat. While you're doing that, we're going to ask that if you have questions, please post the questions in the Q&A box. I want to shout out your wife. She's in the chat. She says, Mo, Mo, Mo. Hey, Mama. I'm going to give you a special shout out. I believe I saw a couple of your sons there too. But yeah, so the family's in the house. So thank you all. And the questions are coming in. And we are going to start with, I'm going to actually start with a question from Todd, because he wants to know, what does your name mean? We could just start with that. to clarify for people what your name means?
All right, so my birth name, the name my mother gave me is Vladimir Magloire. My spiritual name is Kwao Agyeman. So Kwao means I was born on Yauda, which is that Yauda has specific spiritual significance in the Akan system. So depending on the day that you're born, you're given a particular name, right? So Kwao is for Yauda. Yauda can be poorly translated. I'm gonna say poorly again, translated as Thursday. So on the calendar, I was born on Thursday, okay? But that's Yauda for in the Akan system. Agyeman means one who calls the nation, one who receives the nation, right? So that's what my name means, Kwao Agyeman.
Awesome. And I just want to acknowledge some more of these, this feedback from the audience, because it's so important for us to encourage each other to continue doing this work, but superb. And thank you for bringing these lessons to us so clearly. Your presentation was very informative. Great job presenting. Thank you all. Yes, our next question comes from Robert Whiting. He would like to know, what are the key 5 things that are important for Black people today to know about Haiti? He says 5. For the sake of time, you can give us 3 if you would like. But what are 3 to 5 key things that are important for Black people today to know about Haiti?
Haiti has a wealth of ingenuity. Go beyond that, we got to go to Haiti and save Haiti, right? Go to Haiti to learn from Haitians. That's what you need to do, right? For at the moment, don't go to the South portion because there's a whole bunch of kidnappings. Not good. Go to the North. No kidnappings in the North, okay? So I got to say what I got to say, right? So if you want to go to Haiti, go to Okap. It's much safer up there, but there's a breakdown in the whole system. So there's a lot of kidnappings in the South, centered around, not in the South, but mainly in Port-au-Prince. So the 2 major airports are in Okap and Port-au-Prince. So fly into Okap, right? And then everything will be cool. All right. So ingenuity. There's a level of ingenuity that you cannot believe, right? So one example was that cell phone, fixing that cell phone, which I've never seen anybody do that before in my life, right? And since then, I've never seen it before, after that either. So ingenuity, learning how to do with almost nothing. What do you do with nothing, right? And so here in the United States, we're just totally dependent. We don't care how much water we use. We don't care how much electricity we use. We just run that joint over and over again. In Haiti, depending on which house you're going to, water is delivered in a big cistern. Water's coming from a well. You got to make do what you got, right? And people make do. And there's less violence in Haiti than the United States, right? Way less violence in Haiti than the United States. While the United States, imagine there was no water in the United States, what would happen? It'd be a mess, disaster, right? So ingenuity is one of the key things, right? Learning to do with less, right, is an important thing to learn from Haiti. And I would say the last thing is the Lakou system. I think that's one of the most important things. Study up on the Lakou system and what we built in Haiti under the Lakou system, and then try to get understanding of that. That's going to bring you into voodoo. It's going to bring you to all the kinds of stuff. So that's what I would say.
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to continue with that discussion around Lakou because there are several questions around that. But I do want to acknowledge someone asked about books to continue learning about the Haitian Revolution. There was a slide that was shared with some resources. Also in the chat, someone mentioned Dr. Bello, Baina Bello, has a book called Sheroes of the Haitian Revolution. And there's also the book by Wade Nobles, The Island of Means, which Brother Clyde Babakojo shared. He also asked, since we're gonna get into Loku, so there's a few questions. Many of our questions are around that. So some of them I am going to combine, but I want to start off just with the one that Brother Kojo asked. He asked, "Are you familiar with the Island of Memes, Haiti's Unfinished Revolution by Wade Nobles? And then where can we find literature about the Loku?"
I read that book by Wade Nobles a long time in college, I believe. I think so. So I can't recall exactly all the details of it. In terms of the Laku system, I really can't tell you. There's some articles about it. I could send to Mama Ajwa, and she could email it to everybody in the group. At least 2 articles I know of. Yeah. Besides that, what I know is from talking to cousins and family in terms of what we have in Haiti.
Great. So the importance of the oral tradition that we must also utilize. Thank you. Also in the chat, you'll see additional suggested readings. So please, if you're looking for resources, check there. So let's get to the next question. Is the Laku system still being practiced in Haiti? If not, why? And when was this practice stopped?
Yeah, it's still being practiced in Haiti. You still have Lakus in Haiti. You have several hundred Lakus in Haiti, not to a significant level that we had before. The main reason why of the decline is economics. The greater proximity, the greater encroachment of the West into Haiti, right? The more people want to leave and get what you have in the West, right? They want that. They want American stuff, right? Just like we want American stuff, right? So they want American stuff also. So we want American stuff, they want American stuff, right? And I'm gonna give you a perfect example, which is I just tell the truth, right? So when we were in Haiti during the earthquake, it was me, my cousin, and my son. We were there for 10 days. No hot shower. We were living in a mosquito-infested backyard because my cousin's house was not finished, right? We were getting mosquito bit all the time and stuff. We barely could find food to eat because, again, this is a middle earthquake, right? Not a lot of restaurants open, barely anything open, all kinds of stuff for that. To get food, you're waiting 4 or 5 hours, right? When we got back on the airport, we got back to the hotel to get to the airport in Dominican Republic. We took that hot shower. We're like, oh God, thank you. I took a hot shower, right? And as soon as I said that to myself, I said, oh my God, I can never talk about brain drain from Haiti. Why is it that everybody wants to try and get what the West has, right? I mean, I'm revolutionary and I'm complaining about the West, but I'm taking all the benefits of it also. I'm taking all the benefits of it, right? I'm not really worried where my next meal comes from, right? So you have this fight between what the Laku has to offer and what going to Okap and going to Port-au-Prince has to offer, which is where job opportunities and stuff for that, quote unquote, are, right? I have a friend in Haiti that I send money to on a regular basis, and he stayed in Port-au-Prince for years while he had family land. He didn't want to go back to it, right? And finally, he got married and he went back to that family land. That's where he lives now, right? But he was always trying to figure out how to make it happen in Okap. And that's a micro example of what happened to everybody. That's one. Second thing is, under Papa Doc in the late 60s and Baby Doc in the 70s into the 80s, you have the centralization of everything in Okap, right? So in order for you to do any kind of state stuff, you had to go to Port-au-Prince. I'm sorry, everything in Port-au-Prince. So you had to go to Port-au-Prince to do that. So there was a drain of a lot of resources from the rural areas into the city areas. And if you look at pictures of Port-au-Prince, you have overbuilding, right? Almost looks like a favela type situation in Brazil, right? So that's in Port-au-Prince. If you go outside of Port-au-Prince in the more rural areas, it's awesome over there. I hope that answers the question. What's the next one?
Yes. Okay. The next question comes from Victoria. She says she's of Haitian descent. So how can she learn more about the Lakou system so that she can teach her future lineage?
Again, I'll send out something about the Lakou system to Mama Adjoa, and I think she probably has an email list from this, and she can send to you guys. I'll send 2 articles about it. There's really a really good one about if you just type in on Google Lakou system Haiti, there's a good article about the role of women, about how women make everything happen in the Lakou system, right? Sometimes it's led, a lot of times it's led by a man, right, an elder male, but the women are making it happen, right? The connections between the Lakous is happening because of the women and stuff like that. So, but that's a really good article. If you can't find it on Google, I'll send it to Mama Adjoa.
Okay, great. Sister Alma would like to know, how does the Lakou system envision security, thinking about the movement in the United States and state violence that descended on it?
Yes. So to move was like a Lakou system, I would say, right? It was like an attempt for a Lakou system. The only thing is that I think some of the stuff that we do, we're not going to be able to do it in the city. We have to be isolated. We have to move away from the city, right? Because in the city, we're very close to neighbors, right? We're very close to the state, right? And so we need to move to places where we have some space, we have some privacy, right? Even that's not enough, because state violence they've come down on other places also, but at least it's a little bit better, right? Ultimately, I don't really think we can really do anything here in the US, right? So to me, we have to determine one of the things that we don't do in our organizing. We tend to organize where we are. We don't tend to organize based on a particular purpose and reason, like where we're going to organize. Are we organizing in DC because we must be in DC? Because if we're in DC, we're going to be able to do A, B, C, and D, right? Or should we be organizing in New York? Or we should be organizing in Haiti? Or we should be our organizing efforts should be in Ghana, right? In Nigeria, right? In Belize, where should it be? Typically, we organize where our economics brings us and family brings us. That's typically what we organize, but we don't make a strategic decision of where to organize. And so, I don't think strategically organizing a radical type group in the city is the best, because of the proximity to the neighbors and in terms of what the state wants to do within the city. And part of the dropping of the bomb on Move was from the neighbors complaining, and also from the state want to take over that block, right? And then lay out a path towards justification. I hope that's my understanding of what happened with Move. I hope that helps. The answer helps.
Okay. The next question: how did the beliefs of Vodou affect the revolution?
Oh my! I'll give you one of the best stories ever. I mean, I read this story in the making of Saint Domingue, one of the books I put on the list. And there's 2 good stories in there. There's 2 good things in there. One, when we were attacking the French, they would fire the cannons at us, take a cannon, light it, and fire the big cannon, boom, right? And we were like, hell no. And we would run up, put our head inside the cannon. So here's the cannon, right there. We put our head inside the cannon. And the French would be like, man, forget that. They blow it up and they blow the person's head off. And the next person would be like, put their head in the cannon. And it will blow it off again. Now this is doing two things. It's stuffing up the cannon. And simultaneously, the French are like, what is going on here? We cannot understand this. It demoralized them. They actually wrote about this, saying that we cannot fight these people. This is crazy. But that's the understanding of voodoo, that your physical flesh is just physical flesh, that the cannon cannot kill you. Your spirit cannot die. Your spirit can only die if the creator decides for your spirit to die. And that's also in the calm proverb, right? I will die when the creator decides for me to die, right? But it's also in voodoo also, that significant idea. There's also a song that is sung, right? That they sang famously towards the last battle, where they were like, don't worry about your mother. Don't worry about your father. Don't worry about your friend. If they die, they die. Keep moving forward and attack, attack, attack. Why wouldn't you have to worry? But wait a second, we have a Lakou system, right? We care for family. But at the same time, our family is not dead because we truly believe in the ancestors. It's not just an idea. It's the true belief in the ancestors that if I die, I am still alive. I can still communicate. I'm still here, right? So if my body dies, I am still here. That's a significant part of Haitian voodoo. The next significant part is something that I learned in college when I was in Dr. Small's class, and he had a voodoo priest come in and talk to us in his class, and he gave us a story. You have two best friends growing, they knew each other from kids. Best friends. And they're around 18 years old. One guy, one of the best friends, takes a machete and chops off the arm of the other friend. And Dr. Samzi, that was his name, Samzi, he said, whose fault is it? Who's responsible? And we're like, his friend is nuts. You know, or the whole class was like, his friend, why would his friend do that? And he was like, no, according to Haitian voodoo, the person who's had his arm cut off is responsible because he should have known what kind of friend he had. That's a fundamental part of Haitian voodoo. You take responsibility for what happens to you. You take responsibility for your actions. That's another fundamental part. So when you take responsibility for what happens to you, that means you're going to take responsibility to make sure it changes, right? That's another part of the significance part of Haitian voodoo in the revolution. So two things, we're not going to die physically, right? I'm sorry, we're not going to die spiritually. We might die physically, but not spiritually, and we're still going to be here. Second thing, we're responsible for our own destiny. It's fundamental. Another thing, he had a whole bunch of spiritual work that was being done on the soldiers, right? Those who believed, not all of them believed, right? But those who believed, they were doing all kinds of spiritual bath, ceremonies, all kinds of stuff. The whole thing was launched by Kwao Agyeman, right? Which was a big voodoo ceremony. So it was so significant. Yes. Next question. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm answering this pretty long. I'm sorry.
No, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. We are good for time.
Okay.
A clarification, someone wanted to know, what was the term you used for new Africans not yet indoctrinated to the plantation system?
Yes. I'm gonna type it in there. Neg Bosal. Okay. So that's a Neg Bosal. Great. And so, so neg means person, right? It's not, I'm gonna say it, okay? It's not nigger. Okay, it's not nigger, it's neg. Means like usually a person, right? They would usually refer to a black person, but it's neg, neg bosal. And bosal, I can't tell you what exactly bosal means, but that's what they used, right? And that was a term used to an African who was not enculturated into the slave system. And by the way, about 60%, 60 to 70% before the revolution of Africans in Haiti had been and just enslaved from the continent, 60 to 70%. So they were, because they were working us to death, right? They would enslave us from the continent, bring us over, survive the Middle Passage, and we had a lifespan of 1 to 7 years, right? On working on that island, working in the fields, lifespan of 1 to 7 years. That's why just before the revolution, 60 to 70% of Africans in Haiti were just brought over.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question comes from Diane Butts. She would like to know, what are your thoughts about the documentary 1804 on the Haitian Revolution?
Is that the one
By
that,
Rashid?
yeah, that's the one that the same guy who's in Hidden Colors?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good documentary. I mean, it has its place, right? But I'm gonna put that as 1804 Haitian Revolution 101, right? That's 101. Like, you know, you come to your freshman in college, you get the 101 class. That's your 101 class. We have to go beyond that. We have to go to 202, 303, and so forth. And the graduate work. And the graduate work, to me, is when you start delving into what exactly happened and what lessons we're going to pull from it. To me, 1804 is much more pride. We have to get pride in what we did. Is pride, pride, pride. And I'm saying that it's good. There's a place for pride because we need pride, right? But I think we have to go past that. So it's good as an intro, but we have to go past that.
Awesome. Speaking of going past that, Deborah Bernal would like to know, when are you going to write your book? So the question should be, are you writing a book? But she wants to know when. I guess she's putting it out there.
You know, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about writing a series of articles though. I'm definitely going to write an article for the Sankofa Journal on this talk, because it's been messing on my mind for a bit. And so I'm definitely going to write something on it.
Can you share a little bit about the Sankofa Journal?
Oh, okay. So Sankofa Journal, we have something called the Sankofa Conference in Encobia. The Sankofa Conference is always the first full weekend of April. So in that conference, we meet and it's focused on family development, nation building, and how we're gonna resurrect the community as opposed to internally. How are we going to resurrect who we are internally? That's the focus of Encobia. And so how do we build our families internally? How do we connect our families together? So this conference is all on that. Everything that we discuss in our conference is directed towards that.
Okay, wonderful. Just so people know, first weekend in April, so the Sankofa Conference. Thank you for sharing about that. And Diane also like to know, would you be interested or have you thought about scheduling a tour of Haiti?
Yeah, I mean, I was until the combination of COVID. I was in Haiti last year for 4 days. My uncle was sick, so we went to go see him. But with COVID, we were like, we were literally working on a tour. And then there was, with Jovenel assassination, just before Jovenel, there was a lot of political unrest in the streets. So I had to be careful. So I didn't feel safe me bringing a whole bunch of people, you know. So I'm waiting now to see how this like, it looks like COVID, whatever version of COVID you want to say, pandemic, whatever, doesn't matter. But it looks like it's changing now. So I think sometime next year, might be planning a trip. I'll let people know if I'm doing something that I can, but it won't be a big group, there'll be a small group and stuff for that.
Okay. Our next question They would like to know, why did Haiti pay reparations circa 1825?
Yeah, so in order for Haiti to be recognized by other nations, they had to be, in terms of the embargo and that kind of stuff, be allowed to trade with other countries, basically the European countries and the European control countries. They had to agree to this, to repay back what, it's even hard to say it, right? Is like repay the French for the land that they took back from the French in the island, right? So they had to repay the French for that, and they had to agree to that, which is in today's money is equivalent to about $20 billion, right? And so a lot of resources on the state level resources were taken towards and to repay this debt, quote unquote debt, bullshit debt, excuse my expression, right? To repay that debt. It took decades to repay it, right? Money that could have gone to other places, okay? Now, you kind of wonder, should they have agreed to pay it or not? Some people, when I ask people in Haiti, why did we agree to do this, right? So some people argue that it was the leadership that agreed to do it and not the people. Some people say that if there was a re-invasion of Haiti, that Haiti may not have survived that re-invasion, right? But we can't tell that, right? So in the final answer for me is that the leadership made a mistake in agreeing to this.
Okay. The next question, kind of more on current events. Rashamela would like to know, is it true that the mountains of Haiti are worth billions of dollars because of the minerals and that they are being extracted by foreign countries every day?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard several theories on that, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes.
Okay, and this is our final question for the evening. I think this question is a great way for you to bring in and emphasize some of your key points. And the question is, do you believe we as Africans are suffering as a whole across the world because we have lost some of those characteristics you mentioned? And those characteristics, I'm going to take that to mean that were found in the local system, or some of those lessons that were learned, or some of the characteristics that allowed the Haitians to forego their internal conflict to focus on that key goal of defeating the French. So I'm going to add that to the question. That was a lot. Should I repeat it?
Yeah, repeat it one more time, please.
Okay. Do you believe we as Africans are suffering as a whole across the world because we have lost some of those characteristics you mentioned?
I definitely think so, right? Simultaneously, I think spiritually, if we think that everything emanates from spirit, right? There is a spiritual lesson that we don't understand yet. And so when we reconnect with that base spirit of who we are as a people, and we understand what is a spiritual lesson that we have to learn here, then we're going to be in a different place. And so right now, it is very difficult for us to understand this lesson, right? To learn and grow from this experience, right? So we're stuck in this loop of disaster, of oppression. We're stuck in this loop, right? Because one, like Kwao Agyeman said in 2000 Seasons, right? We don't understand that what is happening in the desert, right? In the beginning of his book, right? When people are coming back from the desert saying, do not go there. It's disaster, it's hell. But we're still trying to go. We're still trying to go. And this includes us on this call, right? It includes me, right? We're still stuck in this system. the more stuck we are in the system, the less we're going to be able to understand the spiritual lesson that we have to learn. Fundamental spiritual lesson of why we're in the situation. And right, so part of it is, yeah, we have oppression from Europeans, right? Capitalism, right, overtook a lot of the indigenous systems over took a few hundred years, but it overtook them, right? The variations of capitalism over time overtook, right, the greed, the avarice, the deceitfulness of Europeans wherever they went. I can't even just add more words, but all that overtook indigenous systems over a few hundred years. But however, spiritually, there's something we need to learn here. And so fundamentally, I am trying to understand what is that spiritual lesson we have to learn, which is going to manifest in a physical way, right? So spiritually, we're going to learn it, and it's going to manifest in a physical way, which is going to turn this whole thing around. That's what I believe.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you, Brother Kwao, for such a powerful presentation tonight. An engaging and informative presentation. The chat has been lit up all night. We really do appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts, your views, and your perspective about the Haitian Revolution, a critical aspect of our global African history. So we are truly appreciative here at IKG for you joining us this evening. I would like to invite everyone out to our next IKG Wisdom Wednesday, which will be next month, Wednesday, September 21st. And that will feature our founder and director, Anthony Browder, who always gives us a yearly report on the ASA Restoration Project. So we definitely want you to look out for that invite, register, attend. It's always amazing to see the great work that's being done over in Egypt. So, Kwao, were there any last thoughts that you wanted to leave with the audience before we officially close out?
No, just be strategic in everything that you do, especially when it comes to our people. Be strategic and analyze, and don't take anything at face value.
Thank you. And I just want to lift the fact of this presentation, you emphasizing another aspect for our study of history, which is, of course, to apply those lessons strategically for today and the future. Thank you so very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. We hope and trust that, we pray and trust that this presentation was definitely enlightening for you and will serve as a benefit for you all. So we are going to officially close this out.
Merci.
Peace, everybody.
Merci.